Good evening, friends. We are live, and this is episode 125 of the unnamed show. We don't really have a name yet for this, and we've been live now as of tonight 125 times. We actually, a few months back, ended a nonstop streak of going live. I believe it was 114 nights straight. We broke the streak, and we've had live streams off and on since then, but we're happy to be back tonight. Want to talk tonight about why Bitcoin, why now, and by the way, if you're new to the stream, I primarily talk about investing, roll into that, current events as they impact, influence, have something to do with, in context, investing, and Bitcoin especially, in my humble opinion, is right smack in the middle of current events. And so we want to talk a little bit about that tonight. I'm going to let you guys know about some resources that I've taken advantage of that I think are worthy of you looking into. I've started getting text, emails, direct messages, comments on Facebook and Twitter, people I know saying, hey, I've been listening to you talk about this crypto thing and I would like to know more. So the message is getting out, and that's something I want to do, is bring value, be able to share knowledge and information. I'm estimating I have spent over the last 5 months roughly 200 plus hours studying, researching, reading, listening to audiobooks, watching videos, all the things on our economy in general, Bitcoin specifically, cryptocurrency more generally, and I've come to some conclusions. I have acted on those conclusions, began to put into motion a investment strategy in a number of ways, and want to talk about some of those tonight. But let's start with why Bitcoin. Maybe I should start with saying there are over 9,000, roughly, maybe even 10,000 cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin being the daddy or the granddaddy of them all. I think Bitcoin is about 12 years old. We'll talk about how it's performed here in a minute as far as investments, as far as comparing it to other investments. But I believe with, considerable conviction that Bitcoin is more important than it ever has been. For many people, it's more accessible than it has ever been. It's much more expensive than it has been in the past, and it will only go up in the future. But, in years past, it was still very, not a lot of information out there about it. A subculture primarily using it, but the those that have embraced Bitcoin now crosses a very wide spectrum. And by the way, if you're watching live, we're going to have dialogue here, so you can comment in the live chat. Let me know where you're watching from, what questions you have, and we're going to interact with you tonight. That's why we like going live. Obviously, this video will be available as a replay, so if you're watching the replay, glad you're here. Hopefully you get value out of this one tonight. Not going to be switching back and forth between a lot of screens. I'm not going to be showing and doing any technical analysis, so if that's the kind of show that you're looking for, I'll go ahead and let you know that's not what I'm going to be doing tonight. I think there is value in that, but that's not what I'm bringing tonight. So let's get back to Bitcoin again, and why I think it's important, and why I think it's important now. I don't think it is a surprise to anyone that's watching this, whether you are watching live or you're watching the replay, that we're living in a crazy time of inflation, whether you're in the United States where I am, or just about anywhere in the country. And, actually depending on where you are in the country, you may actually be experiencing even worse inflation. We just came out at the beginning of the month. The inflation numbers, the consumer price index numbers for July, and they came back at 5.2%, I believe it was. And the Federal Reserve has traditionally tried to keep inflation at 2%. So they've actually have a monetary policy which assumes inflation. That should be our first indication of problems, because their Federal Reserve is artificially injecting basically inflation into our monetary system, which is arguably a hidden tax or a way to steal. I know that may sound very presumptuous or very forward, being very forward about it, but it's the truth. Especially if things were left to true open market conditions, we would more likely be in a deflationary environment where things cost less. They were better, faster, cheaper. We could work less. Not that working is bad, and not that we want lazy people. And so in a true deflationary environment, those that would be hard workers with more free time would be able to use that time to help do something of value in society, instead of working 50, 60 hours, one job doing that, two jobs, whatever it is, trying to live the American dream and trying to stay ahead of inflation. Again, 5.2%. It's higher. They said it was higher than what they had expected. But the reality is we're probably more in line with what's more realistic, probably at least 10%, maybe 15 or 20%. You talk to some of the experts that look at this and have the data, have time, resources, staff. It's more like 15 or 20%. And so we're going to get back to why Bitcoin, and I'm leading up to that. But, let me ask you, what investments other than the stock market, and we'll talk about that in a minute, why that scares me, but what investment do you know of, generally speaking, that your average person can be in that's returning, 5% or more? It's certainly not the bank. You're lucky if you get, 1%, I think. I haven't honestly even looked, but I know it's super, super low. And I'm going to talk about tonight some options that you have that are very, that are not, in my opinion, very risky. I'll say that I do not believe that Bitcoin is risky. I will accept and actually suggest that I embrace the fact that Bitcoin is volatile. It certainly changes price on any given day, potentially $2,000, $3,000, $1,000, $2,000. But if you're holding for the long term, that's not an issue, because it's going from bottom left to upper right, and it has been on an upward trajectory, if you zoom out, as they say, since its inception. Since I'm kind of talking about that, I'll make this, I'll share this statistic with you right now, since we're talking about it. But Bitcoin, generally speaking, there are some other things, but it's not typical. But generally speaking, or compared to any other traditional asset or asset class, Bitcoin over the last decade has far, in a way, exceeded any other investments as a percentage on an annualized basis. The next closest thing is the NASDAQ 100. So, for example, the NASDAQ 100 has returned I believe it's about 20% Bitcoin. Anyone know? In the comments, if you do, you can share. But in the last 10 years, over the last decade, Bitcoin on an annualized basis has returned 230%. So that's 220% better than the next closest asset, which is the NASDAQ 100. Now, technically, vintage Porsches, the Porsche car, vintage Porsche cars over the last decade apparently have returned more, but it's not every day that you can go find and understand and know all the intricacies, markets, all of that for vintage Porsche cars, but you certainly can understand and learn enough to be able to buy Bitcoin and hold it and just keep it there. It's super simple, and it can be more complex if you want it to be. If you want to learn more, you certainly can, but the formula for investing in Bitcoin, and I'm talking specifically about Bitcoin, and it can be applied to some of the other cryptocurrencies, but I would start with Bitcoin because you don't have to honestly know a lot. There is a certain amount of trust, yes, but with Bitcoin, you buy it, and when it goes down, if you have more money, you buy more because you know that in the end, it's going up. And actually, very specifically, at any point in time in the history of Bitcoin, if you bought Bitcoin and you held it for 4 years, didn't sell it, didn't touch it, you made money. That's probably not possible to say about any other asset. Now, briefly want to talk about, because Bitcoin is seen as a hedge against inflation, and I certainly believe that it is. Gold is more traditionally a hedge against inflation. Obviously, the U.S. dollar and many other currencies around the world, the world used to be on a gold standard where the currency was backed by gold, and you could turn in, redeem, if you will, your note or your dollar, your currency, and receive an ounce of gold. That all changed forever in 1971. I believe it was August. I don't remember the actual day, but in August 1971, Richard Nixon basically took the whole world off of the gold standard. Now, America had the unique, I guess, opportunity and position as the alpha country, I guess you could say, at the end of World War II to negotiate, if it was truly a negotiation or maybe it was more like a demand with the clout that America had to say that, okay, all of the allied countries, we know you need to rebuild, you need to do a lot of things, but the United States dollar is going to be the world reserve currency, but you can redeem that for gold. And so that lasted for, for 30 years, roughly. And then when Nixon gave his infamous speech and basically said, among the other things he said, basically, we're gonna stop with the commitment to return to you in gold. When you give us the dollars back, we're not going to do that anymore. And the reality was, over the years, the different countries had come to distrust that the U.S. dollar was going to maintain its purchasing power, because obviously we, as the world reserve currency, because no nation with fiat currency ever maintains the restraint that they should. They print more than they have. It turned, fractional reserves. So we printed in order to buy things, in order to take on debt, whatever, printed more money so we could go buy things in the world cheaper basically than anyone else because we owned the printing press. But nonetheless, and it started before 1971 in many ways with regards to our monetary policy. and all of that. But with gold not backing our U.S. currency in any way, shape, or form, we have, in my humble opinion, began to embark on a downward spiral, and where we are right now, 2021, 2022 is just around the corner, and they say that inflation is transitory. I don't think the average person believes that it's transitory. We all know that when prices go up, they don't actually come back down. Maybe in some instances they do, but generally speaking, if a company raises prices, they're not going to bring those prices down. And so that inflation is permanent. And so unless across the board people's wages are going to go up enough, then you're permanently in a situation where your dollar will buy less than it bought yesterday. And so this is the why Bitcoin. This is the first reason why Bitcoin. A couple of points to understand. Scarcity is one of the premier elements of what you would call a hard money, a money that is scarce, money that's actually not just easy to come up with or create. Bitcoin is a proof of work process, which means, there are mining equipment that requires energy. I'm not going to go into all that, but basically, it was designed by Satoshi Nakamoto to basically emulate the process of creating gold. Gold, you had to expend considerable energy, considerable time, considerable resources, time to discover where the gold could be, time to dig it up. All the process, if you've ever watched the videos on Discovery Channel or whatever it is with the gold mines in Alaska and other places, it's a pretty incredible process, and it's not as though they produce tons of gold each year. And even gold, although there is only so much of it, I'm sure, in the world, it's not absolutely scarce. Don't know how much gold there is, but we're still discovering gold. So it has an aspect of scarcity, but not specifically scarce. We can't know how much gold there is in the world. With Bitcoin, there's only going to ever be 21 million Bitcoin, so it is the ultimate scarce hard money that's ever been invented in the world. And with a 10-year progressive track record, surviving through a number of obstacles, if you will. Now with institutions, some of the largest hedge funds in the world, JP Morgan, Chase Bank, Deutsche Bank, you can keep naming them. There's a organization called NYDIG, which made it possible for at least 650 banks in the United States, along with credit unions, to be able to offer Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency services. So it is becoming more and more of a common thing. And so I'm gonna get to the other reasons why, but I'm also want to talk about why now for a moment, because that was the other question that I have in the title and what we want to talk about tonight. Why now? Well, why now is quite simply, it is an asset that I believe, don't know exactly when, but is headed towards at least $1 million a coin. And who knows where it will stop. But as the ultimate scarce, hardest form of money, it is going to be an asset that people are going to flock to. They're going to want to have it. The US dollar will continue to be printed. The Australian dollar, whatever their dollar is, will continue to be printed. The euro, all over the world, by and large, every major country, nation state in the world is on the fiat currency. They also can print as much as they want, whether they have their own fiat currency or whether they use the currency from another nation state. Nonetheless, they have fiat currency. And there is going to be most likely a great reset. I'm going to use that term, a great reset, which means we're not likely going to be able to just inflate our way out of trouble. There's not many more levers to pull. We're already at practically zero interest rate. There are places I understand in the world where there's negative interest rate. So you can borrow money and basically not pay as much back. All kinds of implications on that. And so one of the ways to escape that system over time, and one of the ways that you can do that, is to acquire Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin, by all accounts, at least certainly compared to where it used to be, and compared to, I think, almost any other stock, if you compare it to stock, I know Amazon, I think, is 3,000 something a share. Other stocks are, in that price range. Bitcoin right now is, I'm going to look over and see. Yep, Bitcoin is at almost 45,000. Literally right this moment. It changes by the second. But at 45,000, that's not cheap. But it is cheap when you compare it to 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, 125,000, 500,000, and $1 million. 5 months ago, although I'm not going to tell you how much I have, but 5 months ago, my goal was to, at some point in my lifetime, own 1 Bitcoin. My goal now is to, have 3 or 4 or 5. So as I've learned more, as I've come to the conclusion that it's more important, not only for me at 55, but for my kids and eventually for my grandkids, I'm doing my part. Now, I believe, that we need to prepare our kids with the tools that they need, give them the opportunity to learn, grow, all of that. They obviously have to put their own foot forward in the world, but the reality is we're allowing things, we collectively are allowing things right now that are certainly not the fault of our own kids or grandkids. And so I don't think it's a bad thing to set up some things that will help them avoid and not be impacted by what is most likely to come. Whether America will ever go through hyperinflation or not, I don't know. But we could certainly go through something similar to a Great Depression. The stock market, by all accounts, is way overvalued, overpriced. The price, if you will, or the cost of capital, not only for institutions and businesses, organizations, but even individuals, is so low compared to, in times past. The ease with which people can obtain credit means that people are literally buying stock on credit, getting loans to buy stock. Companies are buying back their stock. All of these things have and tons of people buying it, has the effect of inflating and overvaluing stocks. And so that's where I think most people are flocking to, putting the money in the stock market. You can make a lot of money, right? Or you could several months ago in buying GameStop, a company that was dead, basically. That's a whole nother story. But the point is the main point I want to make is I'm personally very concerned that the stock market is in a bubble of some sort. Obviously, many people have 401ks, IRAs, those types of things, retirement accounts in one form or another, invested heavily, if not exclusively, in the stock market. And if we do have another crash, 50%, 60% maybe of their portfolio is lost. Some of those companies may never come back, just like in the, just like back when all the tech stocks had their crash. I owned some of those stocks. Some of those companies never came back. I had At Home. I'm trying to think of some of the others, and I literally, for probably 8 years, stayed completely out of the stock market. As crazy as it is, Dogecoin came into my world, and I bought some Dogecoin, actually made some money off of it, a good little amount. But as I started studying more and more about cryptocurrency, where we're headed with our monetary policy, where we've been with monetary policy, looking at the history of money, all of those things, it became very apparent to me, at least, that Bitcoin and a few other cryptocurrencies where I wanted to have my money. Now, I believe that if you could only pick one, you should pick Bitcoin. If you want to get into crypto and you're not sure what to get Bitcoin. If you want to do it in a simple way, just get Bitcoin. Bitcoin, over a period of time may not perform as well as some of these alternative coins, or as they're called, altcoins. And if you have a level of understanding and sophistication, you can certainly, and I do some of this, so I'm not saying that I'm sophisticated. I kind of led into that, but that's not what I meant. But if you've spent the time, if you put in the work, I do believe that you can invest in some of these altcoins with hopefully the goal of, yes, picking a 10x or 100x, maybe even 1,000x coin, buy it, watch it grow, sell it, buy more Bitcoin. That would be my approach. I could literally talk for hours. I've been going almost 30 minutes, and I'm not going to, but I'm going to give you a couple examples, and this is where I'm going to mention some resources. You'll see on the bottom of my screen right now, in the bottom right, a link to Voyager, which is basically, it's not an exchange. They're technically a broker, but you really wouldn't know the difference. You go on and you buy over 60 crypto. Bitcoin's on there, Ethereum's on there, and that's where I would go. They actually have, and I'm going to get to the questions here in just a second, so hang on. They also have their own native token called VGX, and I'm not sure. So I think this guy on Twitch, I'm not going to show his comment, but unless you want to leave me a different one, I think he's asking, why am I talking about Bitcoin? So that's exactly what I'm trying to cover. So you may have to go back and replay some of this. But on Voyager, you can buy Bitcoin. I do own some Ethereum as well. I own a fair amount of their specific current cryptocurrency VGX, and that's pretty much what I have on Voyager. And now you can earn interest. So if you earn Bitcoin, if you have Bitcoin on the platform, you can earn 5.25%, I believe it is. And if you are a part of their loyalty program, which is where that VGX token comes in, you can earn 0.5%, an extra 1%, or even up to 1.5% extra. So that would be 5.25%, 6.25%, 7% interest on Bitcoin. Now that's crazy, because with Bitcoin, unlike earning interest on your dollar, and I'll explain that in just a second on Voyager as well, but think about the impact and how crazy it is that you could have an asset on the Voyager platform, not only earning 7% interest, which is a healthy interest rate, but on an asset that is appreciating in value. So just imagine for a moment, to make it easy, let's say that Bitcoin right now is $50,000. It stays roughly in the 50,000 mark. Let's say over the next couple of months, you're earning 7% interest, and you earn that interest in the actual coin that you have invested in. So you would earn 7% interest in Bitcoin. So, and then basically now you're earning the next month 7%. You have to divide it by 12 because it's on a per year basis. But then you're earning now 7% on more Bitcoin than you had before the previous month. Not only that, at the point where it goes up from 50 to 100,000, now you only invested 50,000. You're now earning 7% interest on 100,000, for example. So that's crazy. Let's go now, or let's talk a little bit more about the why now. Part of the why now is because of what I just said. Again, Bitcoin's at around 45,000 right now. By the end of the year, it's certainly possible. It may not happen, but it's certainly possible. And many are calling for a Bitcoin that's 100,000, 125,000, all the way up to some are projecting a $200,000 Bitcoin per coin. So even if you got in at 50,000 and it made it to 200,000, that would be a 4x. If it got up to 100,000, that would be a 2x. So it's pretty crazy. So no one in Bitcoin has ever said they got in too early. Or everyone that gets into Bitcoin always says, certainly me as well, why didn't I get in earlier? So the reason why now is because if you don't get in now, you're going to have to pay more for it. I posted this on Facebook today, which was basically to encourage people to get in now because the financially privileged, the rich, let's say, many of them are ignoring Bitcoin right now, and it's going to cost them some money, but they will get in. They will get in later. But you, if you're not a part of that class, if you will, of society, the rich, you'll get in too. You'll, almost have to. No, I don't mean physically, but you'll find that it's necessary to be a part of that new economy. But it'll be much more costly for you. And actually, there is a very real potential of a wealth transfer. There are going to be millionaires, maybe even some billionaires, that are going to completely ignore Bitcoin, until it's at 250,000, whatever. Now, if you bought, worked really hard, saved all your money, bought 3 or 4 or 5 Bitcoin right now, or over the next couple of years, dollar cost average as well, you might find yourself, and not that it's only about money, but you might find yourself on par with, or financially on the same level playing field, if you will, with some of the millionaires that decided to ignore Bitcoin. And it's possible that it may get to a point where they're like, hey, it just costs too much, and they're too possessive of the money that they have because they lack the conviction. Spend the time, do the work, study, research, and you'll find out that I think you'll come to the conclusion that Bitcoin is definitely a hedge, not only against inflation, but against a hedge against a situation where you may find that you no longer want to live in the country you live in, you want to go somewhere else. If that country gets to the point where all you can do is take your physical person and your family with you, if you have a family, relatives, whatever, if all you can leave with is the clothes on your back, as they say, or maybe a bag or two, you can't take your house, you can't take your stocks. They'll strip you potentially of all of those things. Wherever you land, wherever you end up, the one thing that you could take with you is your Bitcoin. If you can, even if you don't have a device, if you can't take your wallet with you, hardware wallet, whatever, your phone, even if you can remember 12 words in the right order, you can carry basically in your head millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, thousands of dollars, billions of dollars for that matter. You can take it with you, and when you get where you're going, hopefully you're going to a friendly place, you can get a computer, phone, whatever, and you can recover your Bitcoin, sell whatever you need to be able to have money in the new place that you live, and your wealth travels with you. There's never been anything like that prior to the history of Bitcoin. A decade ago, that didn't exist. It wasn't possible even a decade ago when it was invented. Obviously, most people didn't understand it. Most people are afraid of it. I've been in IT, information technology, over 20 plus years. And when it came along, I completely ignored it because I didn't understand it. I was busy living my life like most people were. But, those people that I guess got introduced to it and thought more about it or thought enough about it, bought Bitcoin at $2, $10, $100, $1,000, $2,000, even $10,000, $20,000. All of those are great prices when you look at what it is today. One of the other, why nows is, and it's somewhat related, but it's like, hey, things are not getting any better. Again, I mentioned that we're being told that inflation is transitory, but I don't believe that. If you want to believe that inflation is transitory, that's fine. I'm not going to be able to change your mind. Got a comment here saying I don't understand inflation. Maybe they could tell me how they understand inflation, and then we'll compare notes. But what I understand about inflation is that it's theft, right? Because what I know from study, and when you look at the history of money, and you look at the history of economies, an economy that is left up to market conditions typically does not experience inflation. When you leave the government out of it, when you don't have central control, when the people of that country or of that society are in control of the money, when there is no central authority running it, then generally speaking, especially if it's backed by something like gold or something that everyone believes is hard money, something that takes real work to create, something that's not easy to copy or to create more of, then those societies during those periods of time did not, generally speaking, experience at least high inflation. Why would you need inflation? The reason we need, or I shouldn't say need, but the reason inflation was invented, literally invented in the sense that we cause creation, or we cause inflation through, for one, making, changing or increasing the supply of money. And I'm not talking about physically printing dollars and just giving them out. So I do understand, I think, a considerable amount about inflation and how it occurs, why it occurs, and why central banks and nations allow it to be created, because they need to spend. They need money to be spent. We don't save money, generally speaking, anymore. We spend it. That's what keeps the economy rolling. When we stop spending money, companies stop getting revenue, stock prices go down, the investors, get disgruntled. When companies go down, they fire people. People don't have money to spend anymore. I think you get the picture. And so, inflation, by and large, in the modern era, is a creation of central banks. And so, when corporations can get money at these ridiculous interest rates, they can go buy assets. Rich people can also acquire more assets. But here's the thing, and here's another one of the why Bitcoin. A country, United States, for example, can raise taxes. They don't have to ask you. You don't get to vote. They can change the taxes. They've done it, obviously, from the beginning of taxes being a thing. You could own a lot of real estate, and that would be great. And I'm not saying don't own it, but don't own it exclusively. Don't rely on, in my opinion, real estate as your primary investment. It's a great investment, all things being considered, if the United States didn't have the ability to tax it. You can tax it so much that you can't afford to keep it, for example. But in our current state, since they're not doing, taxing it to death at least, real estate is obviously something that if you're smart, and certainly the wealthy, can use as a way to stay ahead of inflation. But those that primarily work for a living, don't have assets to speak of, inflation hits them harder than it does those that have tangible assets, real estate, or have a business that is able to, or that will continue to be needed and necessary during inflationary period. Why do you think that even during a pandemic, why was there still a lot of money being spent with the stimulus, with all the other things? People were going to Home Depot and Lowe's right and left. Anytime I ever went to Lowe's or Home Depot in the heat of COVID-19, tons of people there doing all their projects. They weren't working, but they had money coming in. So that's what kept at least that segment going. But a lot of your smaller businesses went under. What about them? So there's a great divide. The divide is getting larger and larger between the haves and the have-nots. Middle class, in many ways, is disappearing. This is another reason why, and why now. It's the same answer for both. If you want to be able to be your own master, if you will, of your world, and be able to do well during good times and bad, then you need assets. So my strategy is invest in Bitcoin. As it goes up, sell some of the Bitcoin in order to invest in real estate. I doubt that I will ever, well, I shouldn't say ever, but the likelihood of me investing any significant amount of money in equities and stocks is not very likely. I'm 90+% invested in crypto, other than home and property that's on our home. But other than that, it's Bitcoin, some Ethereum. That's basically it. The Ethereum at some point will probably be sold in order to buy more Bitcoin as well. You can earn interest, like I said, on Bitcoin. It appreciates in value. So why would you not do it? Now, one thing that you can do, and I mentioned that I was going to talk about a few other things. You could, again, on Voyager, you could go into Voyager, get your account. And by the way, if you use my link, and the code is in the description. If you're on YouTube, you can see it in the description. Go to the YouTube link. If not, go find me on YouTube. But you get $25 in Bitcoin free. Yes, I get $25 in Bitcoin as well. It's a win-win. We both win. If you go to Voyager directly, which you can certainly do, you don't get anything. You get a great experience. You get a great platform. You get all the things that Voyager gives you, but you will forego the free $25 in Bitcoin. So why not use my code, use my link? We both win. You get something, I get something. It amazes me sometimes that people will just almost out of spite, go directly to the site, not use the link, which is perfectly your right to do. But it's like, why would you do that? This is all free information, and we both get to win, but I digress. So Voyager, get $25 free Bitcoin when you invest your first $100. I would invest that in Bitcoin, but you can obviously do what you want to do. Then you can begin to earn interest. Now on Voyager, you do have to have a minimum amount of different for each different cryptocurrency. It's different, I believe. With Bitcoin, it's 0.01. I've not done the math on that, on how much dollars that would be. So there are other alternatives. You still have to buy the Bitcoin somewhere. So I would go with Voyager. You could go to Celsius. That link is strammel.info/CEL for Celsius. And that's a platform where you can earn interest on your crypto. I have both of those accounts because in some cases, Celsius pays a higher interest rate, and in other cases, Voyager pays a higher interest rate depending on what your which cryptocurrency. And by the way, I'm curious. Got a new light in the background. You can see it bouncing off the wall. I'm curious what you think. Let me know what you think about the lighting. I'm always trying to work on my lighting. Also have music in the background from Soundstripe. Hopefully it's not too loud, but I kind of like to have a little bit of background music. Prior to starting to talk about crypto and all of that, I talked a lot about technology, about live streaming. Still probably want to work that in to what I do, but constantly trying to improve my live stream, not only from the production quality, if you will, video quality, lights, sound, all of that, but also obviously the content. So, my goal is to try to bring value to you. Have nothing at this moment to sell. If I had something that people would buy, I would certainly sell it. I have no pride in that. I believe that people, if they have something of value and can make money on it, obviously we all have to make money somewhere or another. My hope is that my investment in Bitcoin, or my actually not only hope, but my true belief is that, as I'm investing in Bitcoin, that's going to help support in more ways than one, me being able to do even more with regards to bringing you good content. So I have a regular job like most people do. So, these broadcasts become secondary to, giving 110% to my quote unquote regular job. So I would like to spend the time to prepare, have notes, have an outline, all those kinds of things. But it almost always turns out I don't have the time to do that. So I just hit the button, go live anyway, and bring what I can. So I'm going to try to wrap this up here in just before too awful long, but definitely go to Voyager. I want to talk a little bit about some other resources. One of the books that I recently listened to on Audible, and I also got the physical book. So I'm now reading it, rereading it with the book, have it available, all the times that it's not as convenient to have audio, but it's called The Bitcoin Standard. There is a link in the description, and yes, I have Amazon link for that, and so I am an Amazon affiliate, and again, it's just another small way that it helps me support what I'm doing here. I have a video camera, although I could have got something cheaper, cost about almost $800, a microphone about $200, lighting, all total around $1,000. a monitor that I can use to kind of watch how things are going. $1,000, a HDMI switcher that allows me to go from one screen to the next. There, for example, is for example, is what I can do with my ATEM Mini Pro. Can switch to where now I'm picture in picture, and you can see Bitcoin live, how it's going. So it's gone up. As you can see, this is actually a 1 minute chart, and for quite a few minutes now, it looks like that it has been going up. I've not been looking at it because I've been going live with you guys, but if we look at the 30-minute, we've still been mostly going up. But Bitcoin has been trading, over the last several days, what would typically be called sideways. It has gone as high up as 48K. So another reason of why now is because relative to what it has been, literally just a few days ago, up to 48K. So now's a good time. Earlier would have been an even better time at 44. But again, I would not let the current price sway you once you have come to the conclusion that Bitcoin is the right investment strategy. Get in. Don't worry about the price. I will tell you, and I pulled up a little bit different overlay here so you can see this logo for I Trust Capital. I want to talk about that for a minute. This is another why Bitcoin and why now. It's easier than it's ever been before to have a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA, or if you have a company, even a 401k invested in crypto. Now, there are some legacy companies and platforms that were, came out first, and they offered some things and they were great, but most of those had really high trading cost, monthly costs that were pretty high and all that. I Trust Capital, I think it's been 2 weeks now. I transitioned a retirement account into I Trust Capital, funded it. You can literally trade 24/365, 24/7, 365, buy and sell. I would not recommend that you use it to buy and sell every day, although you can, and I have. I'll actually give you an example here in just a second. But you can transition, or I should say convert a, let's say you leave a company, right? And you've got a 401k, you can take that 401k, put it into, I would recommend a Roth IRA. With a Roth IRA, you, all of your all of the appreciation that those assets bring to you are completely tax-free, not tax-deferred. Traditional IRA is tax-deferred, whereas a Roth IRA is literally tax-free. The saying goes, it's not how much you make, but it's how much you keep. So if you have any money in a retirement account, you can certainly look into, see if it's right for you. This is not investment advice, it's opinion, it's my own experience. Hopefully it's valuable and entertaining, but it's not investment advice. But you could go to I Trust Capital, use my link, you'll get a free month. They do have a monthly fee. It's negligible, again, compared to generally speaking how your cryptocurrency should appreciate over time. There is also a 1% trading fee, whether that's buying or selling. Again, I'm 20% ahead of where I was 2 months ago. It's actually been maybe a month. So I put in an amount, let's call it $1,000. That's gone up 20%, based upon investing primarily in Bitcoin, primarily in Ethereum. This goes back to what I was saying about the price. I dollar cost averaged in over about a week. So a portion of the Bitcoin that I got was whether it was a tenth of a Bitcoin or whatever it was, but the portion of the Bitcoin that I bought at that period was in some cases 41,000, other cases 38,000, other cases 39,000. I think, although I haven't calculated it yet, my average or my basis for Bitcoin was probably around 38.5 or something like that. And again, it's been as high as 48. So, it's a $10,000. I haven't calculated the percentage. That's a $10,000 roughly increase if you looked at it about a week ago. Point is you could have a Roth IRA with a 20% return, and it's going to be more, right? Because Bitcoin will surely get to at least 65,000, probably something more like 100,000 if you're somewhat if you're willing to take a little bit more risk. One of the things you could do, I'll explain this, you could buy the Bitcoin now, put it in the Roth IRA, goes up to 100,000. At some point, traditionally, the Bitcoin will then take a correction, enter into a bear market, as they say, and then Bitcoin will stay down below its new all-time high for a while, whatever the cycle ends up being in that particular case, and then it begins its way back up. You get into a new bull cycle, and then it will surpass the previous all-time high and go on to a new all-time high, which could be double or more from the previous all-time high. But what you could do is sell it, pick a number, sell it at 125,000, wait out until the bear market ensues. It may go back down to where you originally bought in, then buy more, and you could double your possibly double the number of Bitcoin that you own. I'm still thinking about the possibilities of that. I'm not sure if I will do that yet or not, but I can give you an example of something similar to that I did with iTrust Capital. One of the other cryptocurrencies that I had, not a ton of it, but enough that it was, it made a difference. I had Matic, or Polygon. I bought it, I think, at $1.11. It actually went up as high as $1.47, I believe. But today, and I should have thought about this 2 days ago, but at $1, I sold it at $1.39 on the iTrust Capital. It had appreciated around $1,000. Was able to get more Ethereum. Again, I think Ethereum, whether I like it or not, whether I think it's hard money or not, honestly doesn't matter to me, because in this case with Ethereum, it's purely an investment. It's purely a strategy to obtain more Bitcoin. That's the ultimate goal with most of these other cryptocurrencies for me, is to evaluate them, understand the sentiment, understand the basically the flow, kind of the momentum, either up or down on those coins, and sell them at a point where I make enough profit that I can buy, in this case, more Ethereum, which when it goes to 20,000 with a basis of 3,000, then I can sell that and accumulate more Bitcoin. So the goal ultimately in most cases is to be able to buy more Bitcoin, and then with having that on Celsius, another thing that Celsius offers you is 1% interest rate loan. So it gets, again, I could talk for hours and hours and hours with regards to how you could architect a new financial world, if you will, for yourself, where I can use my own Bitcoin as collateral, do a 1% loan, have my wife be able to get that new kitchen that she wants. And while I'm borrowing that money, obviously, you hope that, and if you time it right, and you can't time it perfectly, but if you do it during a bull cycle, which is what I would recommend, if you can wait on borrowing the money, borrow during a bull cycle. So borrow 1%. Your crypto that's being used as collateral is increasing in value, and ultimately, basically, you get, in essence, a free loan. The other cool thing about that, if you actually cash out your Bitcoin or whatever other crypto, you're going to have to pay at least long-term capital gains, potentially short-term capital gains if you sell it before you've owned it over, at least a day or hour, whatever it is, over a year. But generally speaking, anything under a year is your standard tax rate. Anything over a year is long-term capital gains, and I think right now the highest is 20%. Unless you live in a place where you have state taxes, I think you have to pay a little bit more. But think of the possibilities there, and you don't pay taxes on borrowing. So again, the beauty of that is you borrow the money, you use the money, do what you need to do. Those assets are appreciating over time. Hopefully you're still working, have quote unquote fiat currency coming in that you can use to pay off the loan. Your crypto has increased in value over that time, and you have, in essence, got a free loan. If you're borrowing at 1% and your asset grows by 20%, you earned 19%. You didn't have a 1% loan. You earned 19% interest on your money. That's one way of looking at it. Or not interest, but your portfolio increased by 19%, which you cannot do that in the traditional financial world. There is no alternative universe where that exists. That's why Bitcoin, that's why now. I don't know how else to say it. There is more that I could say. Kind of want to leave you with something that's my understanding that Satoshi Nakamoto, which is the pseudonym that was used for the inventor or inventors of Bitcoin, but since that's a male name, I'm going to say he obviously chose, or Satoshi obviously chose a male name. So he said, basically, hey, if you're not interested in Bitcoin, I don't have the time to explain it to you. So all you need is a level of interest at this point. You don't need to fully understand it. You just need to be open to the possibilities of Bitcoin, why you would need it, why now. I think I've answered some of those. Go check out the links in the description. The Roth IRA, traditional IRA, the 401k from iTrust Capital is just incredible. Especially if you have a 401k, or if you've got a fairly large 401k and you're going to be leaving I'm not saying leave your company, but if you're going to be leaving your company soon, that would be a great way to put a large amount in there. A Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, is limited depending on your age. I think if you're 55 or older, or 50 maybe or older, you can put up to 7,000. It's less than that depending on your age. One other thing that I'll mention, you can, at 18 at least, your kids could get one. I would certainly recommend, even if you have to give them the initial $7,000, give them the seven or whatever the amount is that they can put in there, put in a Roth. Traditional IRAs, by the way, or Roth IRAs, you can also do a custodial IRA for your kids. The money that goes in that, though, has to be money that they've actually earned through, a traditional, they get paid for doing XYZ kind of thing. So iTrust Capital does not support custodial IRAs at this point, but you might want to start with getting your kids a Roth or a traditional IRA. I would recommend Roth, and once they turn 18, they can then take that and put it into I Trust Capital and begin to grow their portfolio tax-free. So I'm going to leave it with follow me on Twitter, follow me on Facebook. Twitter is at Shane Trammel. YouTube, strammel.info/YouTube. It's on the bottom there. Subscribe, turn on notifications, hit the like button, share. All those kinds of things help. Obviously, I'm biased, but I would like to believe that we're bringing some value here. Got more things to talk about in future episodes. Help us with a name, maybe some kind of a name for the show. We're going to be continuing to talk about investment, continue to talk about the economic conditions that we live in. We're going to be talking about Austrian economics. That is, I guess, honestly, what most libertarians, the school of economics that they would adhere to or would believe is the best. Arguably, I only say arguably because some people have never heard of it, but arguably, I believe it is true from everything I've learned so far. What's considered Austrian economics is the, again, in my opinion, the best fully articulated, expressed, documented, if you will, written, presented form of economics for a true capitalism or open market, free market system. Here in America, at least, we do not live in a true capitalistic society. The government has too much control. They have the ability to architect our monetary system that is a significant hindrance towards a true free market system, true capitalism. It's still, in my opinion, the best place to live in the world. Yes, I'm biased. I'm an American. With all the troubles that we have, still believe that America is the greatest nation in the world. No disrespect if you live anywhere else in the world. If you're watching this, I'm glad that you're watching this. I celebrate you. You may or may not actually be too keen on the government where you live. We certainly have problems here in America, but I don't see myself ever living anywhere else in the world unless it just gets so bad that it seems like it's almost something I'm forced to do in one sense or another. And that, although I hope it never happens, is one of the primary reasons you want to hold Bitcoin. You never know what's going to happen. Again, remember, if you can keep written down or in your head 12 words, literally 12 words, you can take your wealth, you can take your the accumulation of your wealth with you anywhere in the world. Could literally go with the clothes on your back, get to where you're going, and turn that into some money to be able to live on when you get there. It's that simple, and it's what people in places like Venezuela, Nigeria, other places in the world that are experiencing true hyperinflation, they're turning to Bitcoin. Of all the things they could do, they could turn back to seashells, they could turn back to salt, they could turn back to beads of some sort or another, but they're going to Bitcoin. For one, the technology exists now. Even in the worst of countries, people still have cell phones, still have, generally speaking, access to the internet. Cuba turned off the internet, so I'm curious about that, but that's another hot spot, if you will, in the world. People are trying to gain their freedom, want to live a life that of those of us that live in free parts of the world. Even the freest parts of the world have problems, but think about this for a minute. And again, I only say this because it's true, by and large. With exception, I'm sure. But in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Nicaragua, in other parts of the world, when people begin to protest, when people begin to want something different and new, and I think this even happened in Hong Kong, one of the things they tend to do is fly an American flag. America, whether it's true or not, is still seen as a place where people can come and be free to worship who or what they want to worship, free to do their best to improve their station, if you will, in life. I don't believe people should have a station, but I think you know what I mean. Go from maybe having no money to having a middle class income to becoming someone that has an even greater income. In other words, there is this belief, although it's flawed, I believe, to a certain extent, but there's certainly this belief that you can come to America, you can be anybody, you can do anything. I'm super proud that people still think that. It's not perfect, as I said. America has its problems, but I can't think of any other place in the world I would want to live. So as much as I, want to be frank and honest and transparent about, how messed up I think the central banks are, or how messed up it is that they have the control that they do, that we're, over 50% of the wealth in the world, I believe that was the number, is controlled by four people. Jeff Bezos is one of them. Bill Gates is one of them. Two other people that escape me. Elon Musk, for a while was the richest man in the world. So, but we can only control what we can control, and that is ultimately why I think you need Bitcoin. So that's where we're going to leave it. Come back with us for the next episode. So that's why you need to like and subscribe, turn on notifications so you know when we go live again. And until that time, have an amazing time. All right. Good night.